tocaya, su querero, su que
Kilimo Kwanza Agriculture Fest in Tanzania. I will introduce myself last together with the speaker. In case there are gaps in the introduction, I will request the professor to chip in and make the introduction complete.
Working as a senior researcher as well as a director of strategic research. That's all.
I would, yeah.
Richard Munda, I teach political science and then Department of Political Science and Vice Versa.
I'm working at Tanzania General Program, DGM.
My name is Jill Wells. I'm working in Tanzania on a construction sector transparency initiative.
My name is Ignace Ganga from CTI.
Helen Campbell from REPOA.
Francis Omondi from REPOA.
Great. Joyce Bayona from REPOA.
Rehema Tukai.
I'm Brian Cooksey, I'm the author of the Ugly Malaysia.
Glenia Guerra from REPOA.
Kylie from REPOA.
Johnny Murray, REPOA.
Harbour from UNDP.
America Sundet, ex-REPOA.
Thank you very much for that introduction. My name is Damian Igala, where he was a fellow of Overseas Development Institute, placed in the Ministry of Agriculture. Actually, his PhD was about Tanzania, the political economy of Tanzania. Since then, he has maintained special interest in Tanzania, and he has recently joined the board of the Britain-Tanzania Society, and has become vice chair of the Tanzania Development Trust.
Really by cotton and coffee, but they're all really quite small. Okay, so now let's just turn to the stuff. That's just an introduction to, in a sense, provide a context. Realize that we're actually talking about something which is in a way in crisis, because this was something that could be much bigger than was actually serving. Now, the Kilimo Kwanza publication, discussion of it, and I think earlier strategies as well, have posed this question of whether Tanzania should promote small farming or large-scale farming. Okay, and that's a theme which goes right through what I'm going to say. Is it a choice? Is it either or? Is it both? If it's both, on what terms? How do you actually manage this process? And it's not new. It's not absolutely not new. This has been argued about right from the very beginning. So the earliest exports were just collected by people who found things and you know, I'm talking about, when I say earliest, I be careful here. I'm talking about, if you like, the earliest in terms of the involvement of Tanzania in a regular world economy. You could have an argument, you could have arguments about colonial trade and things like that. In a way, that's another thing. But in terms of the Germans and the development of an organised export economy, they started up by doing small scale, and then by the end, there was more and more influence of large scale. They had coffee estates, cider estates, and so on. And probably if the First World War hadn't happened, Tanzania would have become a German settler state. It would have been the Germans' equivalent of Zimbabwe. But the First World War came, and of course, in the course of that, the Germans were thrown out, and a lot of the infrastructure was damaged. And after the First World War, it took time to recover. And again, it was small-scale production that was the way it covered. But by the end of the British period, by the 1950s, the settlers were coming up. And there was land being given to settlers in the southern highlands, in western Kilimanjaro and elsewhere. And they even got organised politically to challenge trying to become a political force in the parliament before independence. So this debate has always been there. And after independence, you had both views. You had the cooperative movement creating a lot of interest in small farming, and I mentioned cotton as an obvious case, coffee, coffee growing areas, a lot of it produced by small farms. At the same time, you also had settlement schemes and other line and mechanizations, other attempts to block farms, other attempts to actually get mechanization to work. So this debate was there. I put a thing that said agribusiness here, because sometimes you get the impression that agribusiness is new. I don't think so. I think Sizewell was always agribusiness. I think Williamson's Tea was an international company investing in tea plantations. Agribusiness is not new. It's not new in Tanzania. Maybe the scale, maybe the brashness, maybe some of the things that they're doing and the way they do it is new, but you can't say that agribusiness is new. It's been here all this time. Small farms can be competitive. Okay. Now, in the same way, small businesses can be competitive. Some people have trouble with both of those. They think that only large businesses can be competitive, and large manufacturing, and only small, and in the same way they think only large farms. In some ways it's a similar argument. They're competitive for the reasons I've given here. One of them is that family farm spends more hours per hectare. You might say that's exploitation of the women and the children who do a lot of the work. They don't get paid, except by the crop they sell at the end of it. But if you use a lot of labour available and it gets used. Second argument is they actually can use the soil in very effective and clever ways which have been developed, very scientifically acceptable ways. When I taught in the University of Dar es Salaam, I taught on a lot of these sort of things. And I remembered then that I had 10 separate arguments why planting 2 crops in the same field together could be a scientifically beneficial thing to do. 10 separate arguments. And there are things like, if you plant maize and beans, that you do less weeding, that you pests spread less rapidly, that the soil is covered, you have less erosion, better use of water, better use of soil levels. So many arguments. And yet, a lot of the colonial, if you go back to the British colonial times, they taught the extension workers to pull the maize up if it was planted with another crop. And why? Because they had in the back of their mind that it might be mechanized. And if you mechanize it, it's not so easy to have 2 crops. You sometimes do, but it's not so easy. So this argument, the skill of the small farmers was in actually devising these schemes, which is very good for preserving the soil. Minimal disturbance. I actually heard somebody talking about a large-scale farm the other day. He said, we're only going to plough the field once every 5 years. And if he's really thinking that's improved. That's an improvement on what usually happens with mechanisation, when they plough much too deep and destroy the soil, and it encourages erosion but also wastes the soil. So there are numerous cases where tractors have been wrongly used, copying Western methods in a different situation here in Africa, and it's led to the soil being wasted. So here you have a huge country with a huge population, huge densities in parts of the country, and they still do it. So it just shows that it is possible. Put it even more strongly, small farms are businesses. Small farms don't usually think of them as businesses. It's very easy to think of small farms as some sort of social welfare program. Right, we can't do anything for you, but we expect you to grow your own food, and then you won't be a drain on the state. That's not how I would see it. They are businesses. I mean, some people, those sort of business things come naturally, and others they're very hard. You'd say the same thing about what I'm really saying here is that agriculture is part of the informal sector, which is also a business. If we were talking about charcoal or brick making, we'd probably say some similar things. What it means is that prices are very important. Above all, farmers are influenced by prices. By that I mean the money they get, not the promises they get. Okay? Not the promises. So if you are promised a price and it doesn't come, or you get a voucher that you can't use, don't count that. That would be very discouraging. So we need, in dealing with small farms, to think of them as people responding to, just like any other business. So actually a lot of things that you would talk about if we were dealing with a seminar of small businesses, we don't usually talk about when we're dealing with small farmers. Final point I make here is if somebody comes up with a good idea, a new crop or a new way of doing it, it can spread in remarkably fast. It doesn't need to wait for the extension workers. The farmers will copy it very quickly. Especially new crops. They see somebody doing something, they actually like to do it. So that's why you can get these very spectacular growth rates when it's appropriate. Also specialization in areas. Okay, so I would say the main reason for those static figures for the main, which I showed for the export crops, is that the prices weren't clear. But compared with the prices of consumer goods, the prices of traditional exports were bad. And they weren't getting through, and there were trouble in the countries. And lots of other reasons, but the actual prices received by the farmers were not enough. But meanwhile, for maize, it was a better condition, and not in one way or another, you could actually sell it. So, and vegetables. In the 1980s, the donors, the international community, almost despaired of agriculture in Africa. And they took it out of their aid, of the aid programs, and they took it out of a lot of discussions. At times, they even implied that it was actually cheaper to grow tomatoes in Italy or Spain, so a country like Ghana or Tanzania should not grow tomatoes, it should do something else and import the tomatoes. Actually, in my opinion, a misuse of the theory of comparative advantage. Economists who understand that. I mean, it's an attempt to use the theory of comparative advantage to say that Tanzania should not grow tomatoes, but it's actually just not a correct use of it. And so they didn't invest in any of the infrastructure. I mean, well, it may have happened a bit. I mean, I think there was slow progress in improving the infrastructure, but very slow progress. And I'm talking now about water supplies, feeder roads, provision of inputs, and so on. And then we go to the current time, and there's suddenly almost a revolution in thinking. It's interesting. This distinction between food crops and cash crops is a complete mess. Is rice in Sakuma land a food crop or a cash crop? On the whole, there's more people that don't eat rice. They eat maize. So it should be a cash crop, shouldn't it? They wouldn't grow it, they only grow it to sell it, so it's a cash crop. But, I mean, you know, it's interpreted as a food crop. And there are anything you can sell is a cash crop, and you can sell all the foods. In fact, if Dynasty was going to go on expanding it, whatever it is, over 10% per annum,